All right, everyone, it is 12 o'clock and we will get started with our Zoom meeting with Sandy Parker. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for joining us. As everyone knows, the election is creeping closer day by day, and we are doing everything we can to get accurate information in the hands of our voters. So thank you for participating, and thank you for all you do to help spread the word about accurate information for voting. My name is Paula Shireen, and I'm the Voter Services Chair, and I'm here today to host the meeting, and I would like to welcome Sandy Parker of Sparker's Soapbox. I'd like to share with you a little bit about Sandy and all of the qualifications that have earned her right to be the person to share this information with us. Excuse me. Sandy is the founder, publisher, and author of Sparker's Soapbox, whose mission is to facilitate and encourage informed voting and civic participation in Collier County and throughout the state of Florida. In recognition of her work to educate and inform voters, she was awarded the 2022 Distinguished Leadership Award by Greater Naples Leadership, Inc., and the 2024 Outstanding Community Partner Award by the League of Women Voters of Collier County. Sandy frequently speaks about government and elections to community groups, to senior living communities, and adult education programs across Collier County. Her community activities include the League of Women Voters, Greater Naples Chamber of Commerce, and the Press Club of Southwest Florida. Before moving to Florida 20 years ago, Sandy held executive positions in accounting, treasury, and investor relations with several Fortune 500 companies, retiring as vice president and treasurer of the Dun & Bradstreet Corporation. She received a BA with the highest honors and honors in American Studies from Douglas College of Rutgers University and an MBA from Wharton School. Sandy, we're thrilled to have you here with us today, and thank you. Before we turn it over to Sandy, I would ask that everybody, first of all, make sure that your mic is muted. And also, if you wouldn't mind turning off your camera, it is a little distracting with everybody's picture on the side. Lastly, if you have questions during Sandy's presentation, please put those questions in the chat box, and at various points through Sandy's presentation, we'll pause and collect those questions and present them to Sandy. Again, thank you for being here, and Sandy, you're ready?
I'm ready. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thanks, Sandy.
Okay, super. All right. Well, thank you, Paula, Stacy, Wendy, the League of Women Voters, for hosting this today and making it possible for people to hear the presentation. Obviously, I'm a huge supporter of the League, and I very much appreciate all that you do. So what I'm going to do in this presentation over the next hour and a half or so is take you through everything that is on the ballot for Collier County voters. I'm going to go over the federal offices with the exception of the presidency, the state offices, judicial offices, local offices. I'm going to talk about the 6 proposed amendments to the Constitution. And I'm going to talk about the school tax referendum. There is a lot on our ballot, and there is a lot to know and a lot for me to share with you. So starting right away at the top of the ballot, right under the president, we've got U.S. Senate. And as everybody knows, Florida and all states elect 2 members of the U.S. Senate. This year, our junior Senator Rick Scott is running for re-election to a 2nd term. When I do my research, the first thing I like to do is visit the candidate's website. I think that there is just so much to learn about a candidate by looking at how they choose to present themselves on their website, as well as the information that they share. I think you can also tell how well or poorly a candidate is funded by the professionalism of the website design. So I like to look at all these things. This is Rick Scott's campaign website. He shows you front and center a carousel of photographs. Most of the photographs have Rick like this. He is wearing a plaid striped shirt, button-down collar, navy blue ball cap that says the word Navy on the top. Of the 14 or so pictures in the carousel, about 10 of them are him with children, these particular children. And 2 of them are him standing in front of a podium that says, "Keep Florida Safe," wearing a suit and tie and surrounded by members of law enforcement. So an interesting choice of pictures and how many of each picture to display. You get a sense of what he's trying to convey to prospective voters. The other thing I look for on a candidate's website is I look for the menu bar, and I want to make sure that there's a place where they tell you about themselves. I think it's important as voters for us to know a little bit of something about the person. For me, their educational background and work experience before running for office are important, and I want the candidate to be upfront with me in sharing that. And then another thing that I look for is I look for a candidate to talk about the issues that are important to them, the policies that they would like to make or to change. When you've got an incumbent running like Rick Scott, frequently the information, instead of a list of issues, is a list of news items that are sharing what they have accomplished for you in their current incumbency. Rick Scott is unusual because in addition to news, he also has something called Rescue America Plan. This is something that he has been promoting, and it's his policy prescription for rescuing America. Okay, so compared to Rick Scott's website, this is what Debbie McCarcel-Powell's website looks like. She is his Democratic challenger. Her website is very plain and simple. It's a picture of her, and she is very upfront about why she is running. She is running to defeat Rick Scott. Also, she wants you to know that she is a mother, a Latina, and an immigrant. She has the Meet Debbie tab where she talks about her background. She also has the tab on the issues where she lays out the issues that are important to her. So as far as both of these candidates, if you go to their websites, I think you're going to find the kind of information that, I was looking for, and I think you should be looking for. So now that we've got the 2 candidate websites, the next thing that I do is I compare the issues that they talk about on their website. I take a look at not only what issues they mention, but the order that they list them in. Those are conscious decisions that somebody has made. And as you look down the list here, there are very different sets of policy areas that the candidates are focused on. Rick Scott, the first thing he mentions is education. So let's see what Rick Scott says about education on his website. This is quoting, "Our kids will say the Pledge of Allegiance, salute the flag, learn that America is a great country, and choose the school that best fits them. We will inspire patriotism and stop teaching the revisionist history of the radical left. Our kids will learn about the wisdom of the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Founding Fathers. Public schools will focus on the 3 R's, not indoctrinate children with critical race theory or any other political ideology." What I think is interesting about this is he is definitely talking to Florida voters. These are Florida issues, but they are issues that are dealt with by the Florida legislature, not the U.S. Senate. He's running for U.S. Senate, but he's talking about issues that are dealt with at the state level. I just find that interesting. On the other hand, McCarcel-Powell, the first issue that she mentions is reduce high costs and inflation. And what she says on her website is, "The cost of living is skyrocketing in Florida. As an immigrant who worked her way through high school and college at minimum wage jobs, Debbie is running for the U.S. Senate because she knows firsthand that we need to do more to support hardworking Floridians who are struggling. So she too is talking to Floridians. She's talking about an issue that is very much publicized, but it's not just a state issue, and it really is the issue of the economy that is being talked about at the national level. The next thing I look at is I look at how much money the different campaigns have collected and spent as just an indication of the amount of support, and then digging deeper, who is providing that support to the candidates. The challenge with federal candidates is they're only required to report that information quarterly. So this is the July 31st data, and we won't see another report until sometime after October 31st. But you can see here that as of July 31st, Scott had spent almost 3 times more than Mucarsel Powell. Even though Scott and Mucarsel Powell are the top 2 candidates, there are actually 4 other people on the ballot who are seeking this position, and I wanted to just share with you their pictures. This is Fina Bonoan. She is running under the Libertarian Party of Florida. Ben Everidge is a no party affiliation candidate. If you look at Everidge's website, you will see he is clearly a Republican, but this enables him to get on the ballot as opposed to running in a Republican primary challenging Rick Scott. So that was a strategic decision by Everidge. Howard Nepper is a write-in, so his name won't even appear on the ballot. And TQ Nguyen is another no party affiliation candidate. I did research on all 4 of these people, and you will find that research on my website, Sparker Soapbox. So those are the candidates for the U.S. Senate seat. Now we'll turn to the House of Representatives. And of course, here, all 435 members of the U.S. House are, the seats are up every 2 years. The term of office is 2 years. There are no term limits. This is a map of Florida that shows the state divided into the 28 congressional districts. And you can see Collier County is circled there. Here we zoom in on that part of the map that shows Collier County, and you can see part of the county is in District 19, part is in District 26, and part is in District 18. Specifically, 1% of Collier County's voting age population is in District 18. That's part of Immokalee. 44% are in District 19 and 20, and 55% are in District 26. So starting with District 19, the incumbent there is Byron Donalds, and he is running for re-election to a 3rd 2-year term. Donald's website is very attractive and appealing. It shows his family. The interesting thing to me is that this website and this photo haven't changed in all the time that Donalds has been in Congress. This is the website photo that he used when he first ran 4 years ago. If you scroll down, though, on Byron Donalds' website, this is what you see. And this is what he is really known for. It says, Congressman Byron Donalds is a conservative leader who will bring the fight to the swamp creatures in Washington, D.C. He's everything the fake news media says doesn't exist. A Trump-supporting, liberty-loving, pro-life, pro-Second Amendment Black man. That's what we need to drain the swamp. Donalds does have a Democratic challenger. Her name is Carrie Lerner, and this is her website. I would say that this is not a particularly compelling website. The white background is difficult to focus on, and we've got the same blue box with the picture of Carrie twice. The text says Carrie Lerner provides responsible leadership while fighting for those freedoms that matter with transparency and integrity. The black box contains a number of YouTube videos, and the one that she seems to be highlighting for you to watch is DNC Chair Jamie Harrison, vote for Carrie Lerner. If we compare the policies that the two websites discuss, we start to see some of the typical party line policy positions, with Donald's on federal spending, healthcare, taxes, immigration, Second Amendment, Lerner on January 6th and democracy, Social Security, Medicare, immigration. But what I notice here is that both candidates are mentioning healthcare. And it's not their first issue, but it's the second issue for both of them. So let's see what Donald's and Lerner say about healthcare. Donald says, Obamacare is a thinly veiled attempt at a government takeover of the health insurance delivery system, ultimately leading to a single-payer socialist system. For Lerner, healthcare access is about trusting individuals and their healthcare providers to make decisions about their bodies and their lives. So again, this is the traditional Republican-Democrat split that we're seeing at the national level. So if you live in District 19, these are your choices. For the 55% of Collier voters in District 26, incumbent Mario Diaz-Balart is running for re-election to his 12th term. He has been re-elected 11 times up until now. He is the longest serving member of Florida's congressional delegation, and obviously his constituents have been very happy with him, returning him election after election. This also is a website that's been around for a while. Those of us who know Mario knows that he has aged a little bit since that picture was taken, and he is smilingly looking at children. His Democrat challenger is Joey Atkins, and this is Joey Atkins' website. I gave this presentation yesterday at the Collier County Library, and there were audible gasps in the room. I can't hear what all you were saying, but this is, in a way, it's like McCarcel Powell's website. It's a very plain, just focus on the candidate. But whereas McCarcel Powell was smiling and looking very inviting, here Atkins is scowling behind dark sunglasses. He has a tattoo peeking out from the neck of his t-shirt, and you can see the chains that are tucked inside the t-shirt. And that's all it says. It doesn't say, as McCarcel Powell's did, why he is running. It doesn't give you much information at all, but there is on the website, you can see on the menu bar, a Meet Joey tab and an Issues tab. So the information is there for voters to look at. Comparing the issues that are discussed on the two websites, Diaz-Balart talks about the things that he has actually accomplished for Florida in the 22 plus years he's been in Congress, improving local infrastructure, Everglades preservation and restoration. Atkins, first-time politician, talks about what he would like to do. The policy issues that he highlights are housing accessibility, cost of living relief, revitalizing transportation, and reinvesting in neighborhoods. So they're a very different set of issues. It's going to be a very challenging race for Atkins if he has any chance at all. And when you look at the money, that certainly bears that out. In District 19, Byron Donalds had spent $4 million through July 31st, whereas Lerner had spent $110,000. In District 26, Diaz-Balart had spent $1.2 million compared to Atkins $35,000. So this is the first place I'm going to stop. If there are any questions on the federal candidates, Paula, anything yet?
Sandy, we have not had any questions submitted. Thank you.
Great. Okay, then we'll keep going. Now we're moving down to the state government, and we have 3 branches of the state government, just as we do of the federal government. But unlike the federal government, we do not have any executive branch positions on our ballot this year. The governor alternates with the president every 2 years, so the 4-year terms. But what we do have this year is the Florida legislature. And here are the 2 maps showing the state divided into the 40 Senate districts and the 120 House districts. Here's a close-up on the Senate map that shows that all of Collier County is within Senate District 28. In District 28, our senator is Kathleen Passidomo. She was reelected in 2022 to a 4-year term, so we do not have a Senate choice on our ballot this year, although about half of the Senate districts in Florida do have a Senate choice on their ballot. In terms of the Florida House, all of the members of the House are on the seats in the House are up for re-election. Here you can see Collier County, part of it is in District 80, part of it is in District 81, and part of it is in District 82. Specifically, 14% of the county's voting age population is in District 80, which runs up into Lee County. 51% of us live in District 81, and 35% of us live in District 82. So beginning with District 80, Republican incumbent Adam Botana is running for re-election. This is his website. It's simple. It's got a picture of Botana. It doesn't say right front and center why he's running, but he does have the Meet Adam and the Issues tabs that enable voters to get the information that they would be looking for. This is his Democratic challenger, Mitchell Schleyer. Half of the screen, when you go to that website, is taken up by white space and a place to donate or subscribe. The lower half of the screen is where you start to see the candidate. You can see that he is smiling. He has bleach blonde hair, a mustache, and a goatee, and he's standing outside. He says, "I firmly believe that positive change comes from collective action. I'm committed to fostering a culture of active constituent engagement. We need a government that works for all of us." In District 80, there is a 3rd candidate running. It's a write-in candidate. And a write-in candidate, their name does not appear on the ballot. We saw write-in candidates in the primaries that were people who qualified to run as write-in to keep partisan primary elections closed. We don't have that situation in the general. In this case, we have a candidate running as a write-in named Patrick Post. His name, as I said, will not appear on the ballot. If you want to cast a vote for Patrick Post, you literally have to write his name on your ballot. He, according to his website, appears to be a single issue candidate. He is all about sustainable solar communities, new electric grid, light rail train, energy literacy, bike and walk pathways, and solar housing. So he's very, very focused on sustainability and sources of energy. The thing about Patrick Post is that he has filed no campaign finance reports at all, doesn't report any contributions or any spending. So that makes you wonder how serious a candidate he is. He's got a website, that's about it. If you compare the issues on the three candidates' websites, you see that Botana and Schleyer have the same partisan issues that we're used to seeing in the Republican and Democratic platforms. Botana is talking about supporting Trump and putting America first and protecting Florida from Democrats' radical socialist agenda. Schleyer is about combating the Republican-led agenda. Post is all about his sustainable solar communities. So if you live in District 80, those are your three choices. In District 81, we have an open seat. The incumbent, Bob Rommel, is term limited. There was a hotly contested closed Republican primary in August to choose the Republican representative for the District 81 seat, and Yvette Benaroche won that primary. Her website wants you to know that she's endorsed by Byron Donalds. She says it twice before you even scroll down the page. She does have the About page and the Issues page. She also has an endorsements page, and these are endorsements that she had obtained prior to the primary. So in addition to Byron Donalds, she's been endorsed by Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, Lee County Sheriff Carmine Marceno, Collier County Commissioner Dan Kowal, School Board Member Kelly Lichter, and more local Republican officials. Benaroche has a Democrat challenger. His name is Charles Chuck Work, and this is his website. He gives you a good look at himself as well as why he's running. He wants to bring good government back to Florida and help end MAGA Republican-led failure in Tallahassee. You will find the Get to Know Charles and On the Issues tabs on his website. Comparing the two candidates' issues, we see for Benaroche the traditional Florida Republican legislative issues: stop illegal immigration, defend the Second Amendment, get wokeism out of our schools, support family values. On Work's issues page, she's got defend women's rights to health care, keep prescription drug prices low, combat the rising cost of insurance, and make Florida resilient against climate change. So they are reflecting the issues and the priorities of the Republican and Democratic parties of Florida. If you live in District 81, your choices are between Benaroche and Work. In District 82, Republican incumbent Lauren Mello is seeking a third term. Her website also hasn't changed since she first ran for the legislature 4 years ago. This picture that I put on here is so you could see what she looks like, because she does not have a picture of herself, at least in the top part of the website. She just wants you to know that she's a conservative that we can trust. Her Democrat challenger is Arthur Osland, and this is his website. He has it's a non-traditional website. It reminds me a little bit of Patrick Post in the sense that he doesn't have a tab for About Arthur, and he doesn't have a tab about issues. You can tell that his issue appears to be the environment. And he's got this thing called Echo Blog, and then there's Spanish. So it's not even clear what that's all about unless you click through the tabs. He is a newcomer to politics. His first career was as a golf course superintendent. His second career was as a career programmer before he retired and moved to Florida in 1985. These are the issues that are discussed on the candidates' websites. Again, it's pretty much the party line issues of the Florida parties. Mellow, protect our Second Amendment rights, honor our veterans, cut bureaucratic red tape, and grow the economy. Osland, reproductive rights, homeowners insurance, keep workers safe, etc. In terms of the money that's been raised for the candidates running for the state House seats, we see what we've been seeing at the federal level, that Republican spending far, far exceeds Democrat spending. The difference is in District 81 for Yvette Benaroche, she actually spent $220,000 before the August primary, $5,600 since the August 16th filing. She knows that her true race was to win the Republican primary, and that chances are, based on the last 40 years of experience, that she will go on to win the general election in November. Any questions about the state legislative races?
Sandy, thanks for pausing. We do not have any questions that have been submitted. Thank you.
Okay, Paula, then we're going to keep going. Move on to the judicial branch, the judges on the ballot. And in order for me to explain that, I need to just give this some context. In Florida, voters have a say on all judges. The Florida court system has appellate courts, the two upper levels of the court system, and trial courts are the two lower levels of the court system. And the way someone gets to be a judge is different depending on whether we're talking trial court or appellate court judges. Trial court judges reach the bench through competitive elections, just like other nonpartisan elections like we have now for school board. These are people who are Florida attorneys who decide they want to be judges. There's an election coming up. They file paperwork and they qualify to run. If there's more than one person who wants a particular position, they have a competitive election. They're on the ballot. Those have taken place already. They happened in August. What we have on the ballot in November are the appellate court justices and judges who are coming before voters for what's known as merit retention votes. Supreme Court justices and appeals court judges don't get to the bench through competitive elections. They get to the bench by gubernatorial appointment. The governor appoints, and then the first general election that is after, I think it's roughly a year after they've been on the bench, they come on the ballot and voters have an opportunity to say, yes, this person merits being retained for a full 6-year term, or no, they do not. So the only choice on your ballot for these judges is yes or no. And then once that brand new justice or judge passes their first merit retention vote, they come back before voters every 6 years for another merit retention vote. So what we're going to look at is what's on our ballot now. We have 2 Florida Supreme Court justices that are facing merit retentions, and they are the 2 newest appointees, Justice Renatha Francis and Justice Meredith Sasso. They were both appointed by Governor DeSantis within the last 2 years. Collier County is one of the counties in the 6th district of Florida, and the 6th District Court of Appeal judges. These are the 10 of them, and 5 are on the ballot this year seeking merit retention. Their names from the top right, that is Keith White, and on the bottom from the left, it's Petra Brownlee, Jared Smith, Joshua Mize, and Roger Ganem. So I've shown you who is on the ballot. I've told you what merit retention votes are, and you're probably now wondering how you decide whether someone should be voted yes for another term. And I think these are some things that we voters can do to inform our vote. The first thing is to know what judges do. And once you know what they do, you should ask yourself, what would make someone a good judge? What are you looking for in terms of qualification and life experience? Once you have a sense of that, read the judicial biographies and compare what the person brings to the table to what you think they should have. You can also look at their Form 6 financial disclosure forms, where you will find out their net worth, you will find out their indebtedness, their assets. That may be information that you consider relevant when evaluating whether you want to retain them on the bench. If you're really a serious researcher, you can read prior opinions and find out how they voted on certain cases. You can do an internet search, which I always do. Rarely will you find useful information about a judge from an internet search. But in cases of newly appointed judges and justices, you can find, and I have found, information about the people before they came on the bench, or even if they've been involved in controversial decisions. I share that on Sparker Soapbox, and there is some interesting information that I found through internet search this year. So the last thing you can do is to read Sparker Soapbox and take advantage of the research that I have already done. Any question on judges? I usually get questions about judges.
Yes, we have a question. Do you happen to know what % of judges nationally are members of the Federalist Society?
I don't. I can tell you that membership in the Federalist Society is something that these judges and justices share in their biographical information, or on questionnaires they've been asked to complete. And it seems to be a bona fide that they want people to know about, but I don't know what percentage.
Thank you.
Which, you know, sort of, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I didn't put it on the slide, but many people make their decision about whether or not to vote, to retain someone based on the party affiliation of the governor that appointed them to the bench. Because the courts have become so politicized that some people feel that if you know that someone was put on the bench by a Republican governor, that will cause them to lean a particular way in judging a case.
First. And that question was from Carol, and Carol said that she thinks all that are on our ballot are members. So that's helpful. Thank you, Carol. Here's another question. Does Sparker Soapbox have info on how justices voted on amendment approval?
Not specifically, but I do have some articles that quoted Sasso and Francis, I think, on Amendment 4. I have some information, but I didn't do a tally that way.
Perfect. Thank you. And thanks for your questions.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
So now we're going to move down to the county level of government. And county government in Florida is a two-part structure. There's a board of county commissioners where the commissioners are elected by the voters in their district. And then there is separately 5 constitutional officers, called constitutional because the 5 positions are mandated in the Florida Constitution. They are elected by voters county-wide. All the terms of office for the commissioners and for the constitutional officers is 4 years. The commissioners serve staggered terms. The constitutional officers all come back for the seats are all up every 4 years in the same year as presidential elections. So starting with the Board of County Commissioners, as I said, the terms are staggered. Here is a map of the county where you can see the 5 current commissioners. District 2 elected Chris Hall and District 4 elected Dan Kowal in 2022. Districts 1, 3, and 5 are up for election this year, and all 3 incumbents are seeking re-election. In District 5, Bill McDaniel had just 1 Republican challenger, so there was a universal primary in August, and McDaniel was re-elected. District 1, Rick Locastro was the only Republican who qualified to run. And so he is on the ballot in November. He is on the ballot because he had a challenger in the form of a write-in candidate. And that challenger is Michaela Kendall. Michaela Kendall does not have a website. She does not have a campaign Facebook page. She does have a personal Facebook page, and this is what it looks like. She also filed a candidate statement with the Supervisor of Elections office, and she also responded to candidate questionnaires that I sent to her. And that's how I got information about Michaela Kendall. I did also contact her because I wanted to know a little bit more about her decision to run as a write-in candidate, knowing, number 1, that her chances of beating Rick Locastro were slim, and number 2, that her name would not even appear on the ballot. She is aware of those things. She's a 23-year-old graduate of Immokalee High School and iTech. She has a degree in digital media and multimedia. And she told me that she's running as a write-in candidate because she could not raise the $3,900 filing fee or collect the 483 petitions that would otherwise enable her name to be on the ballot. But she feels very strongly that voters should have a choice. So based on the information I could find about Kendall compared to what's on Locastro's website, Kendall is interested in the policies around infrastructure, environment, and community development. Locastro talks about governance qualifications, oversight of the commissioners of the finances of the county government, focusing on priorities, proper planning and monitoring performance, and continuing open communication with all citizens. So those are the choices if you live in District 1. If you live in District 3, incumbent Bert Saunders is running for a third 4-year term. And his website talks about mature leadership, talks about the fact that he has been serving Collier County and Florida since 1982. His background is that he was first elected to the county commission in 1986. He then went on to serve in the Florida House of Representatives and the Florida Senate until being term limited, came back to Collier County and returned to private life. And then when he saw what was happening in the county and felt that he had something to offer, he ran again. And so he is now seeking, as I said, re-election to a third four-year term. Saunders is challenged by a no party affiliation candidate. I forgot to mention that he did have a contested Republican primary. He defeated 2 or 3 challengers in that primary, going on to the ballot in November as the Republican candidate. He is challenged by Richard Conover, who is running as a no party affiliation candidate. This is Conover's website. It doesn't have a picture of him front and center, but it's clear on what he thinks the problem is. He asks if you're sick of government selling your quality of life. He has the About tab that I mentioned, and he has a News/Updates tab. Conover is a State Farm insurance agent and a musician who bills himself as the Wolf, Southwest Florida's only one-armed bass guitarist. Both Conover and Saunders have helpful websites, and I did share my research about both of them on Sparker's Soapbox. So that's the county commission. 2 seats will be decided in November. Then we had the constitutional officers, the 5 positions that are up for re-election this year. And this was an interesting situation. 3 of the 5 did not have opposition and are automatically re-elected to another term. And that is Sheriff Kevin Rambosk, Clerk of Courts Crystal Kensal, and Tax Collector Rob Stoneburner. The 2 constitutional offices where there was competition were Supervisor of Elections, where the incumbent Melissa Blazer was seeking re-election, and Property Appraiser, where the incumbent Abe Skinner chose not to run. So Blazer had a contested Republican primary that was closed because there was a write-in candidate. Blazer won the August primary, and soon after winning, the write-in candidate withdrew, leaving the property appraiser seat with Vicki Downs, the winner of a contested Republican primary that was also closed by a write-in candidate. In the case of the property appraiser, when you look at your ballot, you will see Vicki Downs and write-in. Since the ballots were printed, that write-in candidate also withdrew, and Vicki Downs will be the next property appraiser. That's all by way of saying that all 5 of these offices have been decided before it gets to you, the voter, in November. The only contested offices, the Supervisor of Elections and the property appraiser, were decided in closed Republican primaries in August. Any questions on any of that?
We're good. Thanks, Andy.
All right. Moving right along. Some voters will have even more on their ballot. The other nonpartisan elections that we have happening in November are Collier Mosquito Control, the Greater Naples Fire Rescue, and the Marco Island City Council. So starting with mosquito control, most of the county, with the exception of the Everglades and national and parklands, is within a statutorily defined mosquito control district. And here in the green, you can see what the boundaries of the district are. And you may know that over the course of the last year, as a result of legislative action, the mosquito control district boundaries have been expanded significantly toward the east, both because of the development that's already happened, as well as to get a head start on the development that's coming. The mosquito control district is not part of county government. It is a separate entity that is established under the Florida Constitution. We elect 5 commissioners to oversee that mosquito control district in nonpartisan elections. The term of office is 4 years and they're staggered terms. So this year, of the 5 seats, 2 of the 5 were up for election. In the case of one of them, there were initially 2 candidates who qualified, but one dropped out. And that meant the remaining candidate, Reg Buxton, will be automatically elected to that position. The other position that's on the ballot is currently held by Russell Berland, and he is seeking another term. Berland has a challenger named Lou Tennell, who filed the paperwork and did what was necessary to have his name placed on the ballot. Tennell does not have a website. He does not have a campaign Facebook page. He does not have a LinkedIn page. I could find nothing about Tennell through online research, with the exception of one thing, and that is that he is affiliated with a group called Citizens Against Aerial Spraying. So we have the incumbent and we have somebody affiliated with a group that does not approve of aerial spraying. Turning to the fire departments, this map, the colored areas show you the 3 fire districts that serve unincorporated Collier County. The city of Naples and the city of Marco Island have their own fire departments. In the unincorporated Collier County, residents live in one of 3 districts, and the districts are each governed by a board of commissioners that is elected by the voters in the district. The commissioners for the North Collier Fire Rescue District, which is in the purple, and the Immokalee Fire Rescue District in yellow, there was only one candidate for any open seat, so there is nothing coming to the ballot. Residents of what is now the Greater Naples Fire Rescue District do have 2 seats that will be decided in November. The 2 seats on the ballot are, one is for voters who live in the former Golden Gate Fire District to elect, and the other is for people who live in the former East Naples Fire District to elect. Those 2 districts were merged several years ago. So for the people who live in the former East Naples district, which is where I live, there are 3 candidates: incumbent Al Duffy and challengers Stanley Bunner and Wayne Martin. For people who live in the former Golden Gate district, the choices are the incumbent Dominic Biondo and challenger Russell Tuff. For those people, for these races, again, I did deep dives. I share my research on Sparker's Soapbox. For Marco Island City Council, there are 6 candidates running for 4 seats. These are the candidates. 2 of them are incumbents seeking re-election to a 2nd term, Rich Blana and Becky Irwin. And there are 4 newcomer challengers. And again, I did research and shared what I learned about them on my website. So that's it for candidates. Any more questions before we jump into amendments?
I think we're ready for the amendments. Thanks, Sandy.
Okay. So there are 6 proposed amendments on the ballot. Amendments can get to the ballot in a number of ways in Florida. The 2 ways that amendments got on the ballot this year are by either being placed there by a majority vote of the legislature. That's how 4 of them got on the ballot, or through citizen petition, where something in the area of 900,000 signatures from voters across the state said that they wanted it to be on the ballot. And that's a way to bypass the legislature in changing law in Florida. Amendments are voted on by all voters statewide, and an amendment has to get at least 60% of the vote to pass. Some things to consider when voting to amend the Constitution. Does the change really belong in the Constitution? Why isn't it sufficient to do whatever it is they want to do in statute, as opposed to taking it to the next level of putting it into the Constitution? Does it really belong there? Who supports it and who will benefit? Who opposes it and who will be hurt by it? And to the extent that there's a cost, what will it cost and how will it be paid for? And these are the things that I look for when I research to decide how I want to vote on a proposed amendment. So starting with amendment number 1, partisan election of members of district school boards placed on the ballot by the Florida legislature. Currently, all registered voters, regardless of their party affiliation, can vote for the school board candidate of their choice in the primary and general elections. So there are primaries if there are more than 2 candidates running. If in the primaries, if someone gets more than 50% of the vote, then that person is automatically elected. If no candidate gets at least 50% of the vote, then the top 2 vote getters move to the November ballot. But all voters vote on all school board members. Also, as with all nonpartisan elections currently, the party affiliation of the school board candidates does not appear on the ballot next to the candidate's name. The amendment would make school board elections partisan rather than the current nonpartisan. And since Florida is a closed primary state in which only voters registered with a political party can vote in that party's primary, the effect of having closed primaries would be to exclude those voters who are not registered with the party. In Collier County, we have not elected a Democrat in more than 40 years. We are going to elect a Republican to the school board, and that Republican would be chosen in closed Republican primaries if this amendment passes. So, supporters, obviously, the Florida legislature, the majority of which voted to put it on the ballot. Opponents include the League of Women Voters, Florida Tax Watch, and Common Cause. Supporters, in explaining why they think this is necessary, say school board elections are already partisan, and we've certainly seen that in Collier County, where the parties have gotten involved in endorsing candidates in the primaries. Supporters also point out that a candidate's party affiliation may predict how they will vote on controversial education issues, which they say would assist voters in deciding how to vote. Opponents say politics has no place in public education and that partisan school board elections would increase what has already become politicized debate about education. And they say that a nonpartisan board would have more incentive to compromise and collaborate. So to be clear, if you vote yes on Amendment 1, you're saying change the Constitution and make school board elections partisan and list the candidate's party affiliation on the ballot. If you say no, you're saying you want to leave school board elections nonpartisan as they are today. Amendment 2, right to fish and hunt, also put on the ballot by a majority vote of the Florida legislature. The amendment contains 2 provisions. One would provide and preserve forever a state constitutional right to hunt and fish. The right to hunt and fish is already in Florida statutes. This would put it in the Constitution, making it harder to take that right away. The second provision would declare that hunting and fishing are the preferred means of responsibly managing and controlling fish and wildlife. So the 2 aspects it's important to notice. As of 2023, 23 states had constitutional provisions that protected the right to hunt and fish. But only 11 states specified in their constitutions that hunting and fishing shall be the preferred means of managing and controlling wildlife and fish. Supporters include groups that hunt and fish, like the American Sport Fishing Association, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Opponents include the Sierra Club of Florida, the Florida Bar Animal Law Section, and the Humane Society of the United States. So what do the supporters say? First, they talk about the economic value of fishing and hunting to the state of Florida, with approximately $15 billion annually. And they say that enshrining the right in the Constitution will ensure that there are no future bans on fishing and hunting. Opponents, like the Sierra Club, they say the amendment is unnecessary since existing statutes already protect these rights. They also point out that the second part of the amendment would create an easy path toward authorizing hunts that are contradictory to science and are done before any alternative means are implemented to manage wildlife. They say the Florida black bear, for example, would be placed especially at risk. They also say that the phrase traditional methods could be interpreted as a return to currently prohibited methods of hunting and fishing, such as steel traps, spear fishing, and gill nets. So if you vote yes on Amendment 2, you will establish hunting and fishing as a constitutional right and the preferred means of responsibly managing and controlling fish and wildlife. And if you say no, you do not want any changes. Amendment 3, adult personal use of marijuana. This one was not placed on the ballot by the legislature. It was placed on the ballot by a citizen's petition led by a political action committee called Safe and Smart Florida that was formed and predominantly supported by Trulieve Cannabis Corporation, the state's leading medical marijuana dispensary company. Presently, non-medical possession and use of marijuana is illegal under both Florida and federal law. Violators are subject to criminal prosecution depending upon the amount of marijuana they possess or use. This amendment would legalize the recreational use and possession of up to 3 ounces of marijuana by adults 21 and older in the state. So it is important to know that 3 ounces of marijuana is enough to roll about 150 joints. The state of Florida, which was the first to authorize recreational use of marijuana, only authorizes possession and use of up to 1 ounce of marijuana. The second part of the amendment would permit the legislature to license entities that are not medical marijuana treatment centers to cultivate, distribute, and sell marijuana to adults without a prescription. Supporters include Trulieve Cannabis Corporation, ACLU, and the SEIU. Trulieve had $2.5 billion in sales of medical marijuana in 2023 and gave the Political Action Committee $55 million to support the amendment's passage. If the amendment passes, Florida's adult use cannabis sales are projected to jump to about $5 to $6 billion in the first year of implementation. Supporters say that legalizing marijuana would generate significant revenue for both the business community and for the state government through taxes. They also say marijuana is low risk and that adult use has not led to an epidemic of abuse or increased use among youth. Opponents include Governor Ron DeSantis, Attorney General Ashley Moody, the Florida Republican Party, the Florida Sheriff's Association, and even the Collier County Board of County Commissioners, which passed unanimously a resolution opposing Amendment 3. Opponents say the proposed amendment is misleading because marijuana is already illegal under federal law and will remain illegal even if Amendment 3 passes. They also fear that marijuana use may lead to the use of more serious, addictive, illegal drugs and lead to more criminal activity, despite what supporters claim. Former HHS Secretary Donna Shalala, who is a Democrat who opposes the amendment, says, quote, "We should decriminalize low-level marijuana possession, a move that many counties and municipalities in Florida have already taken. Amendment 3, however, would enact an entirely different policy by fully legalizing commercial marijuana sales. Our state can enact criminal justice reform without commercializing a new addiction for-profit industry." So if you vote yes, you want to legalize adult personal use, possession, and purchase of up to 3 ounces of marijuana in Florida by adults 21 and older, and permit the legislature to license entities that are not currently or are not licensed as medical marijuana treatment centers to cultivate, distribute, and sell marijuana products and marijuana accessories for personal use by adults. If you vote no, you do not want to change the Constitution to legalize recreational use, but you would maintain the current regulations for medical use in Florida in place. Amendment 4, amendment to limit government interference with abortion. This was also placed on the ballot by a citizen initiative. This one is a group called Floridians Protecting Freedom, which is a not-for-profit group. As you know, after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, the Florida legislature passed a 6-week abortion ban. The law, which is in Florida Statute 390.111, termination of pregnancy, says, quote, a physician may not knowingly perform or induce a termination of pregnancy if the physician determines the gestational age of the fetus is more than 6 weeks, unless one of the following conditions is met. And they go on. So they use the term gestational age, but that is not defined in the statute. According to the website Medscape, gestational age refers to the length of pregnancy after the first day of the last menstrual period. So that means Florida law currently bans abortions after 6 weeks from the start of the woman's last menstrual period. Many people say that that is not long enough for a woman to learn that she is pregnant. The amendment also states that the government cannot interfere with a woman's decision to have an abortion, quote, before viability or when necessary to protect the patient's health as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. So, viability is the term in the amendment. And there's criticism that the term viability is not defined in the amendment itself, which, by the way, is not unusual. There's not a requirement for it, and oftentimes words are not described in defined in the Constitution. But viability is defined in Florida statute. And it's defined as the stage of fetal development when the life of a fetus is sustainable outside the womb through standard medical measures. And it's generally considered to be 24 weeks. And then the phrase, or when necessary to protect the patient's health as determined by the patient's healthcare provider. That means that what happens after viability or after 24 weeks is between the woman and her medical provider. So that's where we are now and what the amendment would do. So supporters of Amendment 4 include the League of Women Voters of Florida, Planned Parenthood, and the Democratic Party of Florida. Supporters say all Floridians deserve the freedom to make personal medical decisions free of government intrusion. Opponents include the Republican Party of Florida, the Florida Conference of Catholic Bishops, and the Florida Family Policy Council. They say the amendment is vague and will lead to an unregulated abortion industry. So, if you vote yes on Amendment 4, you want to prevent any law from restricting abortion before viability, which is generally accepted to be 23, 24 weeks, or when necessary to protect the patient's health as determined by her healthcare provider. And if you vote no, you want to take no change, which would leave Florida's 6-week abortion ban in place. Amendment 5. This one's called Annual Adjustments to the Value of Certain Homestead Exemptions. It was placed on the ballot by the Florida legislature. It was a party line vote. Republicans wanted it on the ballot. Democrats did not. As you know, Florida offers certain homeowners a homestead exemption that reduces the taxable value of a property when calculating ad valorem taxes. The maximum exemption for homesteaded homeowners is $50,000. This amendment would increase the amount of the exemption annually if the U.S. Consumer Price Index increases. The amendment would not apply to property values used to calculate school taxes. Supporters of the amendment say it's needed because inflation has reduced the exemption's value over the past several years. We've seen increases in the value of the properties that are being taxed, and yet no comparable increase in the amount of the exemption. They point out that the reduction in property taxes that would come about by inflation adjusting the exemption would benefit homeowners who are already stressed by inflation. Opponents, including the Florida League of Cities, say that since the amendment only benefits homesteaded property owners, the burden of government programs would shift to other taxpayers who are not homesteaded. So property taxes are paid for by more than just Florida residents. We've got Florida snowbirds who own properties who are paying property taxes. We have people who are renting who are indirectly paying property taxes because their rent is going to cover the property taxes, etc. If property taxes decline, other taxes will have to increase to fund important government programs, or the funding for those programs would be reduced. The estimated amount of non-school local government property taxes that would be foregone in the first year of implementation is about $23 million statewide, growing to about $112 million after 4 years, assuming current tax rates. So a yes vote means that you do want to increase the homestead exemption if the CPI increases, and a no means you want to leave the current homestead exemption amount unchanged. Amendment 6 is repeal of public campaign finance requirement, and it was placed on the ballot by the Florida legislature. Florida is one of several states that offers public financing for candidates who are running for statewide office, and our statewide offices are governor, attorney general, chief financial officer, and commissioner of agriculture. They serve 4-year terms, so every 4 years there's a campaign. Under Florida's current voluntary program, the state will match contributions by individual Florida residents of up to $250 per person if the candidate agrees to overall campaign spending limits. In 2022, the limit was $30 million for people running for governor and $15 million for people running for one of the cabinet positions. Over the years, candidates from both major parties have taken advantage of the program and agreed to the spending limits. This amendment would eliminate the program and save the state an estimated $4 to $13 million every 4 years. And to put that in perspective, the state budget is currently $116 billion. So, supporters say taxpayer dollars should not be used to support campaign spending, and that this money could be put toward programs that would be more beneficial to Floridians. They also say that the spending limits the program places on a candidate violate their First and 14th Amendment rights. Opponents include the League of Women Voters of Florida and Common Cause. They say the cost of running for office is rapidly increasing and that eliminating the program would give an unfair advantage to wealthy candidates and further discourage the participation of more diverse candidates. They also say if no funding is available, candidates will be forced to turn to private sources and PACs for funding, and that wealthy donors and special interest groups would have more ability to influence campaigns. So, if you vote yes, you want to end Florida's public campaign financing program and the associated spending limits. If you vote no, you want to leave the current program and spending limits for publicly funded candidates in place. There's a lot of information online about the proposed amendments, and these are just some of the sites that I found helpful: the League of Women Voters Amendments website, Ballotpedia, and Informed Voters Guide to the Amendments. I don't have a question slide here, but I've generally had a lot of questions. So why don't we see if we have any before we move on to the school referendum?
Okay, thanks, Sandy. It wasn't necessarily a question, but somebody was seeking clarification. Back on Amendment 3, you had stated that Florida was the first state to authorize non-medical use, 1 ounce versus 3 ounce. But there was a belief that maybe Florida was not the first.
So what I intended to say was that California, well, I don't know if I said Florida was the first to approve 3 ounces or not. I don't actually know if that's true. So if I said it, I misspoke. What I was intending to say was the 3 ounces that is being proposed in Florida compares to the 1 ounce authorized by California, which I believe California was the first state to legalize recreational marijuana. If maybe
Thank you for the clarification.
whoever asked the question, am I addressing it? I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm the one who submitted that. I knew you. I said you misspoke because I knew you were just trying to compare the 1 ounce versus the 3 ounces. And when you said that Florida was the first, I just felt that needed to be clarified because clearly this amendment wouldn't be on the ballot if we had already authorized it.
Okay. Any other questions, Paula?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, then let's talk about the school tax referendum. So this is a referendum that was placed on the ballot first by a unanimous vote of the school board and then by a unanimous vote of the county commissioners. So this is to get it to the ballot. Unlike constitutional amendments, referenda require just 50% of the vote plus 1 to pass. This item on the ballot is called Continue Tax Neutral Flexible Funding for Collier County Public Schools. By way of background, Florida provides school districts with 2 types of funding for public education: funding for capital needs and funding for school operations. Capital funds pay for facilities, building maintenance, and equipment, and they also fund debt payments. Operating funds pay for teachers, office support, bus drivers, and other staff, as well as art, music, athletics, special programs, and more. The taxes fund both of those buckets, and laws restrict how the money in each bucket can be spent. Among the restrictions, capital funds cannot be used to pay operating expenses, and operating funds cannot be used to pay capital expenses. In order for a school district to have the flexibility to move funds from one bucket to the other, a public vote is required through a referendum. The Collier School District says the referendum is needed because the state funding is not fully covering the operating costs of schools, specifically the funds that it needs to recruit, support, and retain highly effective instructional and non-instructional staff and maintain high-quality academic programs. So the district is asking taxpayers to extend a referendum they have previously approved, first in 2008, then in 2012, and again in 2020. This is the fourth time they're asking for approval for the next 4-year period. And the approval would allow the district to reduce property taxes by up to 0.35 mils for capital funds if they at the same time add up to 0.35 mils in property taxes for operating funding. So to give you an idea how much money we're talking about, 1 mil equals $1 per $1,000 of assessed value. For a $500,000 home, the amount would be $175, where your capital tax would go down by $175 and your operating tax would go up by $175. And the referendum would be for 4 years starting in 2025. And it's important to understand that the district is calling this a tax neutral referendum because any increase in taxes for the operating bucket will be offset by a decrease in taxes for the capital bucket by the same amount. Because there's a tax increase involved, the referendum is required. The reason the word flexible funding is used is because it's not automatically going to happen. The referendum gives the district, specifically the school board, the ability when it sets the tax rates along with the budget every year, it gives them the flexibility to decide if they do need to make a shift, and if so, how much. So that is all I've got on the referendum. If there's no other questions, I'll just go into the recap. Any questions?
We are ready for the recap. Looks good. Thank you.
Okay. So the recap says that every Collier voter is going to vote on all of these offices: U.S. Senator, a U.S. Representative, merit retention of 2 Supreme Court justices and 5 appellate court judges, 1 representative on the Collier Mosquito Control District Board, 6 constitutional amendments, and a tax-neutral school district referendum. If you live in the Greater Naples Fire Rescue District, you will elect a member of your district board. If you live in County Commission Districts 1 or 3, you will elect your county commissioner. And if you live on Marco Island, you will elect 4 members of the city council. So these are some key dates. If you requested a vote by mail ballot, you probably already received it. If you think you should have received it and didn't, I recommend that you follow up with the supervisor's office. The last day to register to vote was October 7th. Early voting begins October 21st. The last day to request a vote by mail ballot be mailed to you is October 24th. Early voting ends on November 2nd, and Election Day is November 5th. We covered a lot today because there is a lot on the ballot. I hope everyone feels more informed, knows where to go to do some more research, and knows what questions to ask. I appreciate everybody being on the call, and if there are any further questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Sandy, we don't have any other questions, but we have comments thanking you and showing appreciation for all that you've done to share with us so that we are more informed voters. Seriously, thank you. Everyone's thrilled.
You're welcome. Take care.
Well, everybody, thank you so much for being here today. Share the information. The recording will be posted on the League of Women Voters website, so you will be able to access and share with others if you so choose. Thank you. Good job, Sandy.
Thank you, Paula.